look at some of the stories from the front page of the Philippine Star. President Duterte is appealing to lawmakers to solve the national budget problem. In his public address last night, the president said if they fail to act and to do so, then he will do it for them. The president says he's not issuing a threat, but he maintains that the budget must not suffer due to the issues surrounding the lower house. Now, let's remember the House session is currently suspended until November 16 as bickering over the speakership continues between Taguig Representative Alan Peter Cayetano, the current speaker, and Marinduque Congressman Lord Alan Velasco. In related news, Senate President Tito Soto has accepted the apology of House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, who earlier had put the burden on the Senate for the passage of the 4.5 trillion peso national budget. Soto says they will now do their best to work on the budget with the time they have. The Senate President said Cayetano called him over the phone and committed to transmit the General Appropriations Bill by the 5th of November. That's 3 weeks behind the original schedule of October 15. And the UP Octa research team has noted a decline in the number of new COVID-19 cases nationwide. Octa research says the number of cases in Metro Manila, the epicenter of the pandemic, has come down to less than 1,000 cases over the day. However, their report emphasizes that this trend can be reversed, and as such, they call on for the continued implementation of quarantine protocols. And now let's call in our first guest. With us today is Raymond Basilio, Secretary General of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers of the Philippines. Prior to this, he served as community organizer for the indigenous peoples of Bukidnon and Misamis Oriental in northern Mindanao. Mr. Basilio, welcome po sa agenda. Magandang umaga po.
Magandang umaga po, Sir Roby.
Nag-usap lang tayo nung isang araw sa The Chiefs. And nung nag-usap tayo, ano pa lang nun? 1, 2 araw pa lang ang pasukan. Ngayon, mag-iisang linggo na. Kumustahin natin ulit ang ating mga guro, ang ating mga mag-aaral. How has the first week gone?
Well, ang daming nangyari no sa isang linggong ito. Nakita natin kung paano talaga hindi handa. Una-una yung learning materials ng mga bata, sumambulat sa atin yung napakaraming mali-mali ng mga contents na bakit nagtataka tayo bakit napabayaan.
I mean, isa-isahin natin niya kasi before we get to content, there was this whole issue, first of all, of access. Pagkatapos, alam naman natin yan, everybody was expecting na online, mahirap. Pagkatapos, yung mga makakatanggap pa ng mga physical, let's recap again. Ano ba yung ibang method, ano ba yung methods na makaka-access yung mga kabataan natin, hindi lang ng internet, ng edukasyon? What are the different modes? Let's recap it for everyone.
Well, una meron tayo yung modular. Supposedly ito yung offline, no? Modules yung gagamitin ng mga bata. Then we have the online. Pangatlo, we have the TV-based instruction and the radio-based instruction. No? Ito yung mga modalities supposedly na gagamitin this school year.
And then prior to that, parang alam naman natin, bago pa nangyari COVID, alam naman nating there were already inequities, di ba? Meron na namang hindi pagkapantay-pantay sa access sa education sa Pilipinas. So let's talk about access muna sa online, and let's talk about also the difficulty of getting here. In fairness to the Department of Education, I know Secretary Briones got a lot of flack for calling this a victory over COVID, but malinaw naman, even ako nung una ko narinig, parang malinaw naman yata yung konteksto noon. She said, look, just the fact that we got to opening day of classes, malaking bagay yan. Abnormal naman talaga yung sitwasyon sa buong mundo. And in fact, some people were saying, i-cancel na lang muna natin, mahirap, and so on. But what's your perspective on it? Because I think Ako, naiintindihan ko rin naman yung sinasabi ni Secretary Briones. But what's your take on it? And tell us, how difficult was it just to get to opening day?
Well, unang-una talagang matindi na yung ating panawagan na kailangan magbukas yung klase. Kasi yung serbisyong edukasyon sa kabataang Pilipino, higit na kailangan sa panahon ng pandemya. No? Ang daming storya na narinig natin na bumabagsak na yung mental health ng ating kabataang Pilipino. At ang malaking tulong sana dito ay yung serbisyong pang-edukasyon. Kaya early on, no, nanawagan na tayo ng pagbubukas at ito yung mga requirements na sinasabi natin na maaaring magawa. Hindi masolve yung connectivity dahil sa talagang napabayaan yung ating internet infrastructure sa bansa, pero pwede natin gawing maayos yung usapin ng modular learning. No? Ang problema kasi kahit yung modular learning na supposedly ay accessible sa lahat, ay hindi naiayos yung implementation. Hanggang ngayon, no, nagtataka tayo bakit nasa printing stage yung maraming areas ng bansa. Pangalawa, bakit ngayon, sinabi na natin to, no, na kailangan magkaroon ng support mechanism sa mga communities. Kasi kahit ibigay mo yung modules, sino ang magpapaliwanag ng contents niyan? Kaya ang po ngayon, kahit nag-modular yung mga bata, ay kailangan nilang gumamit ng internet para maintindihan yung laman nito or to communicate with their teachers. No? Kaya nangyari ngayon, napo-force pa rin yung mga bata na magkaroon dapat ng at least smartphone para makapag-research. Ano yung sabihin ng mga concepts na nasa modules na ito?
So you're saying, kasi binreakdown natin, no? There's online, merong offline, pagkatapos meron yung broadcast. I mean, tama ba? That's the simplest way to look at it. But what you're really saying is, actually, sa mga panahon ngayon, there's no such thing as purely offline. Na kahit na I opt or I have no choice but to go for offline, in other words, matatanggap ko itong mga learning kits, di ba? The reality is, kailangan ko pa rin mag-online.
Tama po kayo at doon po papasok yung sinasabi niyong inequalities. Kasi sino po may access sa internet, no? Usapin po ito ng ano po yung unahin ng magulang, pambili ng bigas o pambili ng load. Reality po talaga ito sa ground. Naaawa nga po ako doon sa mga bata when I visited schools in Manila City na nangyari po sa 40 na estudyante, 10, 15, 12 yung pumapasok sa mga klase. Kasi ang problema po, wala silang pambili pala ng load on that day, no? Kaya usapin ito ng hindi lang, pag nagbilang tayo ng estudyante right now, wag natin bilangin yung enrolled lang. Bilangin natin ilan yung pumapasok actual sa klase sa bawat araw. Ito na po yung report ng mga teachers natin ngayon. Ang laki nung nalalaglag sa kanilang klase.
I mean, that's a good point because up until the opening of classes, ang pinakang numero na tinitingnan natin is enrollment. Diba? And DepEd did say what we got still I think more than 90% of the target enrollment. Tama ba yan?
Well, ang sabi nila yesterday 100% na daw ito kung ikukumpara doon sa enrollment last year. Pero bahagdan po nito yung 400,000 ay galing sa private schools. May 2 million po na nawawala na mga estudyante kung titignan natin.
In any case, let's take that as the starting point, di ba? Okay, starting. Just to get to the starting gate, we got 90, sabihin na natin 100% enrollment. Pero ika nga sinabi mo, now we look at the other metrics. And now, napaka-basic for schools, attendance.
Tama po.
And you're saying it's not just about having gadgets. I mean, yung binanggit mo, Maynila pa yan. Ha? I mean, wala pa tayo sa nangyayari sa probinsya. So what you're saying is, even once they enroll, what are the next difficulties? What are the real barriers? Kahit pa may gadget ka na, kahit na sabihin natin may access ka sa internet, di ba? Ano pa yung mga, in reality, nananatiling mga barriers for children to take part? And for that matter, teachers. For that matter, teachers.
Well, yun po talaga ang primarily nakaharap ngayon ng mga teachers natin kung paano nila mai-engage yung mga estudyante sa araw-araw. Ang dati ang iniisip lang po namin kapag online, paano ba namin ma-ensure na nakikinig sila? Ngayon po ang problema namin, paano namin sila ma-engage na bukas sa klase andun sila? Kasi wala po kaming mekanismo para magawa yon unless maglaan pa kami ng additional time para tawagan sila isa-isa everyday.
Tawagan sinabi mo, halimbawa yung kanina nabanggit mo, sabi mo 10 to 15 ang present out of 40?
Tama po kayo.
Is that anecdotal or after 1 week do we have data to give us a picture of, is this a typical classroom every day?
Well, ang na-monitor namin na for a week, nang patuloy siyang nangyayari, Roby, yun yung nakakatakot. Wala pa teachers na nag-report na may 100% attendance so far, no? Yun sa amin, delikado yun. Kaya sinasabi na namin, kailangan pag-aralan na ngayon kung paano yung sustainability nitong program. Kasi hindi tayo pwede proceed na ganito yung mukha ng ating edukasyon. Kasi ang mangyayari po nito, Roby, ay magpa-pass all na lang ba kami? Dahil enroll sila at obligado kaming ipasa ang mga estudyante. Hindi po. Kailangan may matutunan yung mga bata. Yun po yung hinahabol natin dito.
Yeah, and let's back up a bit on the and this was na bring up to that. I know there are some viewers saying, teka muna, public schools to, may pagkakaiba ba yung picture sa private schools? But we all know heading into the opening, we are practically talking about practically everything is public school at this point, di ba? I mean, kasi yung malalaking private schools, especially there, that's what people think of when they say private schools. But the reality is, nagsasarahan din ang private schools. And now mga 90% of enrollments are in fact of public schools. So when you talk about this picture, we're on a certain level, we're not even making a distinction, no?
Tama po kayo. Ang laki po nung tama sa mga pribadong eskwelahan na napilitan po ito magsara dahil yung mga estudyante naglipatan na po sa public schools. Kaya talagang pare-parehas na po ng kalagayan ngayon. Yung natira pong mga private schools, ito yung mga dominant, malalaki, na kaya nilang mag-survive with the background of their students also, no? Ibig sabihin, medyo nakakaangat sa buhay. Pero yung mga dating nasa lower middle class na nag-opt to take a private school education ay nasa public schools na po.
Now we've seen pictures of teachers sa Philippine Star, sa mga dyaryo, sa TV. We've seen pictures of teachers and students just desperately looking for signal. No? And this is assuming, as you said, na meron silang load, no? But I mean, paint us a picture of how desperate people can get. I mean, we're not saying everywhere, no? Marami namang mga teachers din na may access. There were also questions as to whether or not I know some people saw pictures of teachers on rooftops, and some said, that was a protest. It didn't necessarily mean na wala silang ano. But ito, tinitingnan natin na picture. Sinabi nga, some people were clarifying, no, that was a protest. It didn't necessarily mean na wala silang access. But whatever it is, paint us a picture, maybe 2 or 3 pictures, if not one picture can really capture it. But how difficult and how difficult or even how desperate are some people just to get signal?
Well, una-una po sa ating mga guro, kailangan po kasi nila makalagin, no? Ito po yung batayan na sila po ay on work on that day, no? Kapag napapalya po ang internet connection ng ating mga teachers, they are to be marked absent on that day. Kaya talagang hanap po ng paraan yung ating mga teachers para po makapasok sila sa kanilang online classroom, no? Pangalawa, mga estudyante ay naobliga po. Nasasabi nga po ng ating mga ilang teachers dito, mas matinding teacher yung mga magulang, no? Mas masusungit, no? Kaya ang nangyari, kung may access man sa internet, kung may pambili man ng load, yung mga bata talaga gumagawa ng paraan. May kwento po sa atin, no, na yung mga bata nga dito sa communities ay umaakyat ng mga bubong at doon ay gumagawa ng makeshift classrooms, no? Sa mga communities ay usong-uso yung paggamit ng PisoNet, no? Dahil nga wala mga internet cafes, ay nagpi-PisoNet at ito yung pinaka-accessible sa mga communities ngayon, no? At the rate of 5 pesos per 15 minutes ay nagbabayad, no? Kaya nakakaawa yung ating mga estudyante. Kaya we've been calling for the establishment of community learning hubs kung saan may Wi-Fi sana na itatayo yung LGU or yung DepEd para makater yung ating mahihirap na mga estudyante.
Paano yun? I mean, how does that work? What's a community learning hub? Because alam ko, siyempre, gusto natin online nga, no? Para hindi kailangan magkumpul-kumpul yung mga tao. So, ano ibig sabihin ng community learning hub? Hotspot lang ba to? Or are we inviting people physically to a certain center? Ano ibig sabihin nun?
Yung pong learning hub na ini-envision natin, ito po yung hub na itatayo natin kung nasaan yung mga estudyante mismo, that they don't have to travel or they don't have to move from their community. No? Halimbawa po, isang village, no, na magkakalapit yung mga bahay at nakita natin may concentration ng mga bata, then we can establish this internet connectivity hub. No? This is being practiced. No? Ito yung gustong gawin sa Pasig City at sa ilang mga probinsya na narinig na natin na may ganito na as far as Sarangani, Quezon City is also planning to do it. So sana, sabi namin, sana early on ginawa ito para hindi nangyayari itong mga problema.
Pero anong itsura nun? I mean, physically, what is the manifestation of that learning hub? Kumbaga parang traveling hotspot, nakasakay sa jeepney, or sa barangay hall?
Tama po kayo. Mobile po ito, pero yung Wi-Fi access niya malakas because there will be boosters na hindi po kailangan magtipon sa isang area ng mga tao.
Okay. So saan ba sa isang barangay, sa isang komunidad o sa isang sitio, alam natin maraming kabataan dyan, mahina ang wifi. So some LGUs are loading up these hotspots and then pagkatapos yun, parang may mobile hotspot dun sa lugar nyo. Maganda.
Tama po. It's being piloted right now in Pasig and in Sarangani. At narinig ko ang Quezon City, they are also planning to do it. Hindi mo naman plano i-cater lahat, pero at least you have this provision for the most depressed and concentrated communities kung nasaan yung mga bata natin.
Raymond, may idea ka ba kung magkano yung para, I mean, to load up one jeepney, for example, and let's say that can serve, I don't know, 50 households. I mean, I really don't know. Depende siguro kung gaano ang kumpul. Pagkatapos you have bandwidth and so on. But may idea ka ba? Mahal ba yan? Or is this something that even our citizens and private companies in partnership with LGUs can say, aba, gandang idea, kaya ko supportahan yan?
Well, ang take-off ko, Roby, dito, yung PisoNet halimbawa, with the capital of 20,000 pesos, you can connect as many as 50 people at the same time, no? So talagang doable po siya na pwede po talagang gawin, no? Pagtulungan, no, ng
so you can provide up to 50 people for yung 20,000 na banggit mo. That's what? That's good for 1 month, for the full term, for 1 week?
Yung 20,000 kasi yung bibili mo doon yung mahal yung computer, no? Pero the connectivity yung pang-load po, that's the normal I think 200 pesos per day, no, na ginagamit mo. So pwede po talagang pagsimulan sana ito.
Okay, now let's talk about yung offline naman, no? Kasi everybody's concentrating on online, but the reality is marami ring kabataan, especially sa rural areas, especially sa mga kabundukan, sa coastal areas natin, they don't get online, they don't have access. So ito, mano-mano pa rin, physical pa rin, ano to? Susunduin nila, ihahatid sa kanila. What does it look like in our more marginalized communities?
Well, iba-iba po yung forma, may iba po na kukunin ng mga magulang yung module sa eskwelahan every week. May iba naman po sa bahay ng teacher. Yung iba naman po doon sa designated drop-off point or pick-up point na dinesignate ng eskwelahan, no? In some instances also, na talagang malalayo yung mga learners, ay dinideliver ito sa bahay ng mga learners mismo, ng ating mga teachers. Lalong-lalo na po sa mga far-flung areas. So, ganun po yung nangyayari. Ngayon, every week po ito gagawin. Ang problema po dito ngayon ay yung paano po yung usapin ng content, no? Paano po maintindihan ng mga bata. Kaya ang bahagi po nung pagkuha ng module ay dapat may session, no? May orientation si teacher with the parents. Kaya ito po yung inaabangan din natin kung paano po tatakbo ito kasi yung bagahe, no, sa mga guro natin na you have to orient all your parents once a week, no? Orientation pa lang 'yon. So therefore, i-discuss mo sa kanila yung laman ng module. The same time, you will make yourself available practically more than 12 hours a day, available ka anytime that you will contact.
Raymond, kailan yan once a week na yan? I mean, I'm talking to you now, it's now a Friday. tuwing kailan ba yung ano na yan, yung consultation na yan, yung pick up na yan?
Well, supposedly it's every Monday, no? Ito po yung start ng week. Kung
Every
saan
Monday.
isasauli mo yung dating module para palitan ng bagong module. So from there, magkakapaliwanagan. Roby, yung pinaka-practical na side nito, ito po yun. No? Sa klase po, sa face-to-face, isang discuss lang po kami. Yung isang lesson, isang discuss po yan, tapos na po. What's going on right now is we are doing the discussion individually, no? Sa mga bata, tatawag sila, yung mga magulang tatawag. So imagine nyo how draining it could be for our teachers.
Oo nga, so hindi to naka-schedule. I mean, and now we're not even making a distinction between online and offline. We got into this discussion kasi ini-imagine natin, okay, first day of school nung Monday, so sinundo yung materyales, and then ideally, and these are for the, I think it's safe to assume these are really for the poorer families, not only marginalized. So susunduin nila. So next Monday, babalik sila, tapos ibabalik nila yung materyales, pagkatapos palitan ulit. Tapos pagpalitan nyo, panibagong orientation naman. And when we say orientation, it's not just giving the mothers instructions on ganito gagawin. You actually have to give instruction as well, kasi silang mag-guide sa mga anak nila.
Tama
ba
po.
yun?
Tama po.
And then hindi to scheduled na alas 10 magkita-kita tayo, alas 8 kita-kita tayo. Pagdating sa akin nung magulang at 7, o-orient ko siya. Pag may dumating 7:15, o-orient ko siya, tapos buong araw yan.
Tama po kayo. Hindi nga lang po buong araw, no? I have this particular teacher in Cavite na dahil yung mga magulang ng bata ay nagtatrabaho, pag makakauwi ng bahay ng 8 o'clock ng gabi, by 9 p.m., no, kumukontak yung magulang sa teacher at humihingi ng paliwanag. Of course, we cannot say no, no, kasi alam natin na may trabaho yung magulang. So talagang up to late, no? Late night ay kailangang buhay ka pa, may energy ka pa, magpapaliwanag ka pa, isa-isahin mo pa ito.
No, I mean, I want to get to that, but before that, I just want to remind also everybody watching in, yung cohort natin and yung dropout rate sa elementary ay napakalaki na, no? And that we're not talking about our students. We're talking about the parents who have to pick this up tas pag-uwi. So kahit i-orient mo sila, the reality is these are parents, a lot of these parents who have the worst access to education, got the worst access to education themselves also. So I mean, in very many cases, these are semi-literate parents also getting materials. So pagdating nila sa bahay, I mean, wala rin. The kids don't have the support they need at home as well.
Tama po kayo. Sir Robin, kwento ko lang sa Eastern Samar. One principal told us, no, nung namimigay siya ng module, ay umiyak yung mga magulang sa kanya. Tanong ko, ba't sila umiyak? Ang sabi ni principal, sino bang hindi iiyak? Hindi nga sila marunong magbasa, magsulat, at ngayon bibigyan mo ng module, sila yung magpapaliwanag sa mga anak nila. Real situation na nahabag kami. Kaming mga guro, gusto namin gumawa ng paraan para tulungan. Kasi we've been into this profession hindi lang para magtrabaho, kundi yung kami na kailangan makatulong kami dun sa edukasyon ng kabataang Pilipino para kahit papaano ay may laban sila sa buhay. And hearing these stories, no, talagang gusto talaga namin maayos ang problema. Gusto natin maihatid na maayos yung edukasyon sa kabataang Pilipino.
No, so Raymond, there's this term that we've been hearing, and I want you to discuss what exactly it means and how realistic is it. But we've been hearing the self-learning, diba? Self-learning modules or self-learners. It's really designed for self-learners. I mean, talk to us about that term.
Sir Roby, ako po ay graduate ng Open University. So I am a self-learner graduate. Pero before po ako na-accept sa program ng UP Open University, I must pass the exam na kailangan na kaya ko maging self-directed learner. Sa case po natin ngayon sa buong Pilipinas, hindi naman po tayo dumaan sa test na to na kaya ba natin na maging self-directed learner. Imposed sa atin dahil sa kalagayan natin, kalagayan pangkalusugan natin. Kaya it's not safe to say na dahil self-learning modules yung produced natin, they can stand alone. Ang dami pong problema ng usapin ng pagtuturo sa mga bata. Sa classroom nga po, no, ang hirap ng kunin yung atensyon ng mga bata na may teacher. Paano po kapag walang teacher? Paano po kung walang nag-guide? Kaya hindi talaga guarantee yung usapin ng these are stand-alone na learning.
But Raymond, that's literally what it means. I mean, it literally means when it's designed for self-learners and it's optimized for self-learners, it literally does mean that this is something na that you can hand to a child, and then the child, kasi alam ko, ibig sabihin nun, among other things, it means, tama ba, na the answer key is already at the back, di ba? You can check your own work. But that's literally what it suggests and means, that when it's a self-learning module, you read on your own, you check yourself on your own?
Well, sa ideal po na mundo ng mga bagay, yun po talaga. Ganun po ang mekanismo nun. Pero I don't think it's gonna work that way.
Naalala ko nung bata ako sa grade school, and I come from in the context of our society, a privileged background, just because I went to education. I mean, that already makes you privileged, di ba? I went to a private school. Naalala ko nung bata ako, meron yung mga reading modules na yung kuha ka, basahin mo, i-test mo yung sarili mo, nasa color red ka, pagkatapos nun, okay, promoted ka sa ano. But at every instance, I know that teacher was still in front. Diba? I could monitor myself within the environment of a classroom, but the reality is, nandun pa rin yung teacher just in case may tanong ako.
Tama po kayo. Kahit po nung ako po ay kumuha ng degree sa Open University, my professor is always there, no? The material is with me, but anytime the professor should be there to answer my questions. No? So,
okay, now let's talk about yan sinabi mo, yung anytime. Let's go back to what you said. Na ngayon, anytime pinupuntahan ng mga teachers, binabiber ang mga teacher, hindi na kaya matulog. I can imagine the text, yung mga chat, messenger, Viber, WhatsApp, kinukulit sila ng mga teacher. This goes on 24/7?
Yes, sir. Talaga pong ganun. Kaya nga po, ang isang solusyon na naisip namin dyan ay reduce the class size. No? If you have 40 students in a class, let's divide it into 20 para mapagaan natin konti yung buhay ni teacher.
But we have enough teachers for that?
Well, ito po ang isang pagkakamali ng DepEd. We still have 34,000 unfilled teaching items. Ang laking tulong po nitong 34,000. Bakit po umabot ng ganito katagal at hindi pa po napupunan itong vacanting slots ng mga teachers natin?
That's a good point, because as we said, maraming mga private school teachers who lost their jobs and who are looking for, pero if I remember right, the DepEd said they do have these what they call it? The para teachers, among other and teaching aids, among other things. It helps the students, and it can hopefully absorb some of the private school teachers. And yet you're saying there is 34,000 na hindi na-fill in?
Yes po. Napabayaan po ito since last year, no? At nung nag-COVID-19 ay hindi naka-adapt ang DepEd dun sa hiring mechanisms. At umabot tayo hanggang ngayon, no? Well, some would say na sinasadya kasi nakakatipid, no? May natitipid sa pondo, pero mali po. Dapat na sa pinakamaagap na panahon ay mapunan ito upang masolusyonan natin yung naglalaki ang klase, no? Yung bilang ng mga estudyante sa klase ng mga teachers.
Okay, now let's try to get into content. Ang nakikita ng mga tao ngayon, siyempre, yung mga kumakalat sa social media, mga memes, mga ito. And it's because, in fairness, nakikita natin. I mean, it's very transparent. And government is really doing its best to try to broadcast this material over TV and radio. Let's talk about content. Yung mga nakikita ng mga tao na mga kamalian, and let's face it, yung mga kamalian na yan, dati pa po yan. Kahit nung bata pa ako, basta nag-public school ka, makikita mo naman, marami naman talagang mali dati pa yan. It's not just now. But let's talk about that. How problematic is it? Outlier ba tong mga mistake na nakikita natin, or is that typical?
Well, paano ba namin sasabihin ito? masakit sa amin kasi kami yung mapupuntirya, eh, 'no? Kami na naman yung nakikitang,
Hmm.
nagkamali. Pero to be honest ay, may kailangan din sigurong balikan ang Department of Education do'n sa mekanismo kung paano,
Hmm.
nagkaroon ng quality assurance itong mga
Hmm.
materials na lumabas, ano. Lalong-lalo ngayon that everything can be broadcasted, 'no? 'Pag nagkamali ka, you cannot simply, "Oops, sorry, nagkamali ako."
Yeah.
Madaling kumalat ang picture, no? At this morning I was reading this one article na sinabi na ang tatlong bituin na nasa bandila ng Pilipinas ay sumisimbolo sa tatlong isla ng Luzon, Visayas at Panay, no? It was said Panay, no? So
Hmm.
parang napaka-glaring noong pagkakamali, no, na
Yeah.
hindi simpleng
You know, uh, alam mo Raymond, ako isang reaction ko diyan is I'm really sort of fascinated. I mean, fascinated is not really the right word. Pero kasi pinagtataka ko, yung mga nakikita mo sa TV na kamalian, katulad niyan, no? Hindi gaya ng sabi mo, hindi yan pagkakamali ng teacher lang eh. And it's not just the educational system. For that to have aired, you had a TV crew there. You had directors. You had cameramen. You had the writers vetting this. You had the producers who and then on top of all that, you will presume you have the education officials who oversaw everything. Magtataka, wala man lang, teka muna, parang mali yan. Alam ko, mali yan. Di ba? But talk about the state of education in general when something as basic as this can get past literally, I would think, at least 20 people to make it to air.
tama po kayo. Kasi yun nga pagsasabi namin, yung mga teachers po, yung lesson plan po namin na ginagawa, dumadaan kami sa rigorous process ng checking. And yet,
Hmm.
these materials coming from the central office, bakit nakakalusot? Hindi naman po tayo kulang ng tao sa central office. No, we have
Yeah.
a big bureaucracy doing the checking and production of these materials. And paano po nakakalusot? Bilang teacher po, nakasalang po dito yung aming dignidad, yung aming karangalan, no, bilang mga guro. Kaya talagang matinding epekto sa amin ito.
Pero Raymond, bakit nga ba? I mean, as you said, again, in fairness, it's not just this administration. Bata pa tayo, marami ng ganyang kamalian. In fact, nakakatawang mga kamalian and so nakakatawa sana kung hindi lang mga anak natin pinag-uusapan natin. But why is that? Why has our government and our society ever fixed the problem of just making sure just making sure that the quality assurance for the content of our education materials is there. Ano yung punot dulo niyan?
Sa amin, ang isang tinitignan namin dito, Sir Roby, yung problema ng production. Production ng content, no? Hindi kasi ito public, no? Ang ginagawa dito, source out lahat ng Department of Education yung mga contents na ito at inaaprubahan na lang nila na mai-publish at bibilhin na lang ng Department of Education. Matagal na namin sinasabi, dapat yung mga writers ng DepEd ay mga empleyado ng DepEd. No, yung gumagawa ng content ay yung mga nasa DepEd. Kasi alam namin ano yung dapat na ituturo, ano yung laman ng ituturo. Ngayon, talagang ito privatized, no, nakakontrata, sino yung magpuproduce nito. And yet, hindi nasusunod yung vetting process na atin nang nakalagay naman na dapat doon sa proseso ng pag-iimprenta ng mga materials. Lalo ngayon, nagka-pandemya, nagkaroon ng madalian doon sa production ng mga materials. Kaya ito po, ang masama lang po ngayon na ipapalabas sa TV, napapakinggan sa radyo, napopost sa Facebook itong mga materials na ito.
No, we're looking at some of these. L is for rabbit and so on. As kinabanggit mo nga, no, Luzon, Visayas, Panay, and so on. So I mean, as we said, nakakatawa sana to. Kaya lang, we're talking about our kids. We're talking about the future of our country. Now let's go back to the people minding our kids, yung teachers. Yung mga teachers ba, lalo na dun sa sila actually may physical interaction at so many levels. 'Di ba? Kailangan nila sunduin yung materials, kailangan silang rumonda, they're meeting teachers. they're frontliners right now in the time of COVID. Are they protected?
Sir Roby, gusto kong umiyak. Ang dami na pong mga teachers yung lumalapit sa amin na na-expose sila. In fact, may mga nag-positive. And nising kong duling, no, wala kaming nakuhang tulong sa gobyerno. We've been calling for the provision of medical fund for our teachers. We've been calling for the conduct of health screening, for the conduct of mass testing. Lahat po ito pumunta sa binging tenga. And right now, pumasok po yung ilang numbers ng mga teachers natin na nagkakasakit. And some of them are my friends, no? They are my officers in the Alliance of Concerned Teachers. And they're telling me right now, sir, na-expose ako sa magulang na COVID-19 positive na namimigay ako ng module. What will I do? I-isolate ko sarili ko. I cannot isolate sa bahay ko because 2 kwarto lang kami, 4 yung anak ko. Saan ako mag-isolate? 1 banyo lang kami. And there is no provision for them. Para kaming pinasugod sa isang gera na bahala kami sa buhay namin kung anong mangyari. Yun yung apela namin sa gobyerno. Please, intindihin din naman yung kapakanan ng ating mga teachers. We love our profession, pero sana po wag niyo hayaan na dito kami mamatay sa COVID-19 na ito. Please provide us protection.
When you say protection, it's not just in terms of resource. You're actually talking about policy cover also, because these are public servants. These are civil servants, diba? Lalo na public school teachers. When we talk about policy, is there even room to accommodate a 14-day isolation absence?
Ito po yung masakit kasi bibigyan lang po kami ng 14 days na isolation. Pag kami po nag-positive, alam po natin yung gamutan goes beyond 14 days. At pag nag-beyond kami ng 14 days, i-declare po kami na on leave without pay. Paano po namin bubuhayin yung sarili namin? Paano po namin bubuhayin yung pamilya namin? Parang hindi po namin maintindihan bilang frontliners na rin po.
Yun yung tanong ko, are you saying even on a policy level, this was not considered?
Yes.
Just because tama ka, many LGUs will say, ito ang protocol namin, basta na-expose ka sa isang COVID positive, automatic, and lalong-lalo na hindi na pinapayagan sa maraming LGUs ang home quarantine. So kailangan ka sa isolation center. So are we saying even on a policy level, this was not considered na, isang exposure lang, yung buong career mo as public school teacher pwedeng mamiligro?
Yes po, ilalagay po kami bilang absent on leave without pay. So you will not be receiving any salary kapag kami po ay nag-positive beyond 14 days, no? So babalik yung sweldo namin pag nagtrabaho na kami or pag nag-survive kami sa COVID-19. Hindi po dapat ganun yung treatment sa amin.
We're still talking to, we're going to the last minutes of our conversation here with Raymond Basilio. He's Secretary General of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers. Raymond, we only have about a minute left with you, and it is still a school day. Alam natin. It's a Friday. It's the first week of this, kakaiba talaga tong school year na to. Anong mindset ngayon ng mga teachers after 1 week pa lang? Anong iniisip ngayon ng ating mga guro?
Gulong-gulo po ang isip ng ating mga teachers kasi gusto po talaga namin magturo, pero sana po ibigay sa amin yung sapat na suporta, yung resources, yung module, yung assistance sa amin sa gastusin sa load, sa internet namin, no? Ito lang po, bigyan kami ng proteksyon at bigyan kami ng panggastos pag kami ay nagkasakit. Ito lang po yung mga hinihingi namin. Willing kami na maging kabahagi dun sa pagtutulak ng edukasyon para sa kabataang Pilipino.
Okay, Mr. Raymond Basilio, Secretary General of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, maraming salamat po at sa lahat po ng guro natin, mabuhay po kayo. Maraming salamat po for joining us.
Maraming salamat.
Okay, we'll need to take a break. Please stay with us. Agenda will be right back. Roby Alampay, sitting in po for Cito Beltran, and we're talking about school, we're talking about education, the first week of school under the new normal, under COVID. And kanina po kausap natin si Raymond Basilio of the ACT teachers. And now we're going to talk to a public school teacher, Miss Lailani Cruz. Isa po siyang grade 7 teacher sa Ramon Magsaysay High School. Good morning, Miss Cruz.
Good morning po, sir. Good morning po sa lahat ng viewers.
Ma'am, good morning po. It's a Friday. Hindi naman namin kayo inaagaw sa mga estudyante nyo.
Yes po, actually, I had katatapos lang ng aking online class and I'm here now in school assisting ang ating school po in distributing tablets for our students. So, ganun po. Kapag talagang tinatawag ng serbisyo, kailangan po nating pumunta para po sa bata, sa bayan.
Talaga naman po, mabuhay kayo at napakasani ng disposition ni Miss Lailani Cruz sa Ramon Magsaysay. But that gives us an idea of the routine. So kagaya nga po sabi niyo, kakatapos lang ng class niyo. Anong oras po nag-umpisa yung klase niyo kanina? Pagkatapos ngayon, magdi-distribute naman kayo. Anong itsura ng the rest of your day?
Actually, kanina nasa house ako, okay, 7 o'clock. So nag-meet lang kami for 30 minutes ng klase ko online. And then right after, diretso po ako dito sa school kasi nga I need to assist the teachers po talaga and the students po and the parents. So ganun po ang schedule ng teachers ngayon. So ang teachers lang po sa bahay, nag-online class, but sometimes we are also required to go here in our school po. But definitely, ginagawa po namin yun para po sa atin, para sa estudyante po.
But just to give us an idea, when you say na galing kayo sa bahay, nag-online teaching kayo doon, tapos nagpunta kayo sa Ramon Magsaysay dyan sa Cubao, gano'ng kalayo po ba yung bahay nyo? Rinalakad lang ba yan? Nag-jeep ba kayo?
Fortunately po, ayun. So, medyo traffic lang. So, okay naman. 30 minutes po from our home and then going to our school po.
By jeep po yan, by jeep.
Opo, ayun. So, fortunate naman ako, ginamit ko yung sasakyan ng family.
Sasakyan, okay.
Kung magko-commute po ako, actually, hindi ko po yun magagawa. So, talagang sacrifice po talaga sa lahat ng mga kaguruan dito sa Pilipinas. Hindi lang po sa Metro Manila, at sa lahat po ng teachers sa buong Pilipinas po.
But that's a good point. Now, we're talking to Miss Lailani Cruz. Teacher po siya sa Ramon Magsaysay High School, specifically doon sa science program. Tama po ba? Sa science program ng Ramon Magsaysay. Baka hindi niyo po alam, may napakatinding DOST program dyan sa Ramon Magsaysay. If I remember correctly, 100% ang passing niyan sa UPCAT every year. Tama po ba yan?
More or less po, yes. Talaga, kailangan po yun.
But something you said interests me because it speaks beyond you. Hindi lang po tungkol sa inyo. But kaya po sabi nyo, at least kayo, swerte pa kayo, may kotse. Pero sinabi nyo nga, kung lilipat kayo after your online class at pupunta kayo dyan to distribute at this point in time, kung nag-public kayo, kung nag-jeep kayo, hindi kayo aabot. Hindi nyo kakayanin yung ganyang schedule.
Yes, definitely. Hindi po talaga
why do you say that? I mean, why do you say that? And you're relatively near. Pero i-describe nyo nga po yung eksena just from your house on the way to you. Not necessarily your experience, pero yung eksena ng if you were to imagine a public school teacher na kailangan mag-jeep galing doon sa lugar nyo, papunta sa eskwelahan nyo, gaano kahaba yung pilahan na nakikita nyo? How hard is it to even get on a public transport?
Ay nako po, mahirap po. Definitely wala pong jeep. So magbabas ako. Kung hindi bus, most probably ang gagamitin is Grab or whatsoever, private car or taxi. So sa traffic po na pagdadaanan namin, actually hindi lang po ako even sa lahat ng mga teachers po, hindi lang ako, mas swerte na po kasi sa Quezon City lang po ako nakatira. But some of my teachers po nasa Bulacan pa, Laguna. So mahirap po po yung traffic na tinatahak naming mga guro, papunta lang po dito sa school. Even in a normal setting po, ganun po ang scenario everyday. Traffic po sa EDSA, lalo na po ang aming school, okay, tapat lang po talaga at nasa EDSA po.
Exactly. I think anybody from Quezon City, from Metro Manila, has to have a good idea of where Ramon Magsaysay is, and like we said, medyo privileged pa kayo. Apart on top of all things, you're in the capital, you're in NCR, so may access din kayo sa Wi-Fi. Now let's talk about the rest of your day. Ano po mangyayari ngayon? You said nandiyan kayo ngayon sa Ramon Magsaysay, may kasama kayong mga ibang mga guru dyan. Shout out sa lahat ng mga guru dyan sa Ramon Magsaysay at lahat ng guru sa buong bayan na nagsusumikap. But sabi nyo nga po, magdi-distribute kayo ng mga gadgets, ng mga learning materials. Ano po mga hinahanda nyo dyan?
So far po, naka-ready na. Thank you for our LGU for the tablet po. Talagang malaking pasasalamat po yun dahil malaking tulong po yan sa mga bata. Although may mga challenges po, like for example, preparing ng mga modules, preparing ng mga online classes po. Siyempre, bago kami mag-klase sa mga bata, we have to prepare activities, synchronous and asynchronous for our learners po. So yun po. At the same time, medyo marami pong mga challenges talaga ang nararanasan ng mga guro, especially our students po in terms of online classes. Kasi mahirap po ang internet connectivity ng mga bata as well as the teachers.
We're talking about connectivity pa lang, access. Mamaya pa pag-usapan natin yung affordability at saka kung paano binabayaran yung load. Pero again, ulitin natin, this is Quezon City, no? And again, shout out also to our LGUs who have been providing as best as I can the gadgets, the technical support. They've been talking to telcos to try to provide the accessibility. But gaya nga po na sabi nyo, even with all of that, may problema sa connectivity. I mean, paint a picture for us. Tell us a typical story of your students on how hard it can be to just be reliably online.
Okay, like for example po, no, kanina lang or for the past few days, so hindi talaga nakukomplete yung attendance namin. So supposedly I have 35 students, 33 or 31 students, but unfortunately, students ko 30 lang. But improving yung numbers nila, although improving, okay, so minsan may nawawalang estudyante, okay, papasok, that's at the middle of your online class, may mawawala naman. So it's really hard on our part as teachers to monitor the attendance of students. But you know what, despite of the struggles, despite of those challenges, I know that teachers are really trying their best, okay, for the students to learn, because that's actually the goal and mission of the teachers.
Apo, and we really appreciate that. Again, we're talking to Ms. Lailani Cruz. She's a public school teacher sa Ramon Magsaysay High School sa Cubao, sa Quezon City. Kayo po, you're supposed to, kanina kausap natin si Raymond Basilio ng Alliance of Concerned Teachers, and he was saying, doon sa mga modular learners naman, and even para sa hindi sa mga modular, there's at least a 1-week check-in between the teachers and the parents. Nung Monday, I suppose, was the first check-in. Prior to that, there was some sort of orientation, another check-in on Monday. Doon po sa few as well as frequent kulitan ng teacher at kumustahan ng teacher at parents, ano po ang naririnig nyo sa ating mga magulang naman?
Ayun, very fortunate kami, no? Kasi I asked my parents how's the first week. Okay, so a good thing kasi in our school, we had already our orientation prior to the start of the opening classes. So medyo nagkaroon na ng meeting kami with the parents, with the students. But so far, ang nagiging problem talaga nila is the connection issue, connectivity issue sa internet. Okay, and monitor sa mga students kasi even beyond their time, like for example, ang klase nila is from 8 to 5, others from 7 to 3, okay, even after that class, they still need to do some things like answering their modules. Okay, so yun, kailangan minomonitor yun ng mga magulang. Okay, but so, saludo rin naman ako sa mga magulang kasi talaga very supportive sila sa mga anak nila. And that's what we really need, teachers.
Now, ulitin ko na po because this is a bit, I think, irrelevant. Ms. Cruz teaches at the special science section of Ramon Magsaysay High School. Now, if I know this correctly, in a way, bukod talaga yon. It's a separate program from the Ramon Magsaysay High School. It is a DOST program similar to Manila Science, Quezon City Science, Philippine Science, and so on. So these are gifted students, di ba? I mean, these are really, I mean, the cream of the crop. Lumalaban to sa ano. As I said, I know you have a very, very high passing rate in all the university entrance exams, ang Ramon Magsaysay High School. But that means that, again, another privilege that you have is that you have students really capable of self-learning. Tama po ba? I mean, at least you have that advantage. But talk about the other students who are not necessarily on that same level. Kasi yan yung tanong ko kanina kay Mr. Basilio eh. When we talk about self-learning modules, for the Filipino student in general, how realistic is that term? I mean, we're trying to imagine, what exactly does that mean?
Actually, yung mga co-teachers ko, when they're giving stories, yung mga online, modular teachers, talagang they're also struggling eh. Kasi like for example, not all the parents are, although syempre they're so busy, maraming mga, marami silang ginagawa rin, they cannot help their children. So struggle din sa mga bata to understand the modules. Like for example, if you notice, if they have 8 subjects, so they have to answer the 8 modules. So what if kung hindi yun naiintindihan ng mga estudyante? So napakahirap nun. So although it's a self-learning module, okay, pero talagang may mga struggles pa rin talaga. Okay. Especially papaintindi kung ano yung mga gagawin. Kasi kami nga, online class kami. Although I'm handling this social science class, but okay, they're still asking, okay, the instructions, kahit binigay mo na yung instructions, nagtatanong pa rin sila. What more the modular students and teachers? So talagang
So etong the rest of the day, as you said, you're getting ready to distribute. Ano po ba mo? Because we're hearing reports na ang mga teachers ngayon 24/7 call center na raw kayo. Parang wala na raw tigil ang Viber nyo, wala na raw tigil ang Messenger nyo. I mean, kayo po ba? At saka yung mga kasama nyo, totoo po ba? And then we can imagine it. But tell us, ano po bang itsura? Gaano kainit na ang cellphone nyo?
Actually, nakaka-relate po ako dyan. Diyos ko, my goodness. Parang 24 hours po na may notification, hindi lang sa Messenger, even in Google Classroom, in kasi even sa text messages po, meron po talaga yan. So parang hindi na po natutulog ang mga kaguruan ngayon just to make sure na nakakapag-comply kami, nakakapagsagot kami, not just for the students, but as well as for the parents. So talagang saludo po kami sa lahat ng mga kaguruan ngayon. 24/7 po. At kaya nga hindi totoo yung sinasabi ng isang politician na nag-e-enjoy ang mga kaguruan. For your information po, Diyos ko, kung alam niyo lang po ang realidad na ginagawa ng mga guru ngayon. 24/7 po kami nagtatrabaho at naglilingkod para sa mga bata.
Teacher Lani, give us an idea. I mean, on a typical day, just this week, you would say how many messages do you get?
Diyos ko, parang hundreds a day. Bago pa lang po mag-start ang klase ko, like for example, 7 a.m. So 7 a.m. po, may mag-notify na po yan. Nasa ng link? Nasa ng Google link? Ma'am, ano po bang gagawin sa mga ganitong activity? Ma'am, mag-online po ba tayo? Ma'am, mag-asynchronous ba tayo? Magsisynchronous ba tayo? Hindi lang po yan sa text po, sa messenger po. Kasi we're maximizing also the messenger. Okay, so meron po mga notifications dyan. Pag hindi nakakuha ng bata, even the parents po, nagme-message din po sa amin. Parang 100 messages. Kung meron akong 100 plus students, okay, 100 messages din po yung nare-receive po every day. Iba pa yun yung pagsasabit nila ng mga task, pagsasabit ng mga answers, iba pa po yun. So, napakahirap po talaga.
Pagkatapos yung mga tanong nila, everything from, as you said, nasa ng link all the way to sa content ng parang paki-clarify nga nitong lesson na to?
Yes, may mga gano'n na may binigay ka ng, like for example sa Google Classroom, so meron ka ng binigay na schedule sa mga bata. Okay, so 'pag hindi nila na-access yung link na yon, so magme-message nila, "Ma'am, kailangan pong mag-request." Kasi sa amin sa Quezon City, okay, ang students namin, they are required to use their DepEd email. Okay, na provide po ng Division of Quezon City. So kapag nagkamali ang bata, hindi naman po yun maiiwasan na hindi ang ginamit nilang email ay iba or personal email nila, so they need to request an access from us teachers. So kung lahat po ng mga estudyante ay gano'n ang nangyari, so i-request, i-approve at i-accept namin yun isa-isa. Ganun po ang ginagawa.
Hindi ko po alam yan. So wait, linawin ko lang po yan. Ibig sabihin, all our children right now who are on online learning are required to use a DepEd provided email address, yung .edu.ph na ano.
Yes po, depedqc.ph po. Kasi hindi po ganun makaka-access sa aming Google Classroom. Okay, security purposes na rin po yan. Like for example, hindi sila sa Google Classroom hanggat hindi po nila ginagamit yung DepEd QC account po. Okay? Tapos kapag may tools or worksheets kaming isa-submit, okay, hindi rin nila ma-access yun kung ibang email yung ginagamit nila. So it's very tasky din sa mga students kasi like for example, kung may phone kang gamit at gamit yon ng parent mo, ng kapatid mo, so hindi mo maiiwasan na nakalagin other emails. So kailangan pang mag-access po para ma-approve lang. Kailangan pa ng approval rather.
Teacher Lailani, yung mga messages sa'yo, pumapasok ba yan sa SMS o sa Viber o sa Messenger? Ano yung porsyento ng mga pasok sa inyo ng message?
Ano yun po yan? Unang-una sa aming G Suite account. So meron kaming G Suite account sa Google. Sa email po namin, so papasok yun lahat ng bata. So magno-notify yun, sabay-sabay po yun. Like, imagine niyo, meron akong sa isang klase 35 students, siguro a second lang ang pagitan, sabay-sabay magno-notify yun. So kailangan ko po yung i-request isa-isa.
Aray ko po.
Pa-approve po. I-request ko po yan isa-isa. Ganun po. Tapos another na naman po, hindi pa natatapos yung isang klase ko. Meron na naman pong magre-request from the other class. So i-approve po yan. So ganun po yung ginagawa ng mga teachers ngayon. So ako nga po, I'm a millennial. What more the teachers po, the senior teachers. But saludo po ko sa kanila kasi really trying their best na makapag-cope up sa itong new normal education natin. So, mahirap po talaga.
Tinatanong ko po kung SMS kasi syempre iba yung SMS, di ba? Piso-piso yon. Bawat message. So, I mean, marami rin po ba na over text and kayo po ba ang nagluluwal para sa sarili nyong load?
Fortunately po, ako po talaga. Unfortunately, wala po tayong mga communication allowances. Okay? Yun po, talagang kailangan nyo, hindi lang text minsan call pa, pag hindi naintindihan, i-call mo pa yung attention ng estudyante, ng parents. Pag hindi pa naintindihan ni parents, ng estudyante rather, tatawagin nyo pa sa parents, bibigay nyo pa sa kanila yung step by step. Kaya hindi lang po text yun, even call po. Okay, so may bayad yun at pino-provide po yun sa sariling packet ng mga teacher.
Now, Teacher Lailani, again, Teacher Lailani is with Ramon Magsaysay High School. She's teaching grade 7. Kumusta po, I mean, ano po yung scenario ngayon sa bahay? I mean, what does it look like for these children? Not just your students. As we said, alam natin yung mga students nyo kakaiba, no? You're in the science program. But in general, ano pong naririnig nyo at anong nalalaman nyo dito sa interaction nyo na rin sa other teachers and yung interaction nyo sa mga parents? We also know a lot of parents did not necessarily finish grade school even. A lot of parents did not even finish high school. And then yung mga nakapagtapos, alam natin may trabaho sila. Ano pong eksena this first week sa mga kabahayan?
Parang yung nakikita ko po mga memes ngayon, no, totoo po yun. Parang ako lang, yung sa pamangkin ko, ang parent, kailangan gumising ng maaga, sabihin, oh, anak, ano na, online class na. Parang nagkakaroon ng bangayan between the parents and the students po. Ganun po ang nangyayari.
Kasi hindi bukod sa yung usual na inaalmusal nilang pagalit sa nanay at sa tatay, ngayon ano pa, teacher pa si mami at si daddy.
Yes, parang talagang malaki ang role ng mga magulang ngayon kasi sila ang talagang nagmo-monitor sa mga bata po. Kung pwede nga lang sila na ang mag-online, gagawin nila yun. So parang gano'n na nagiging senaryo. Tapos meron pa, dahil hindi mo maiiwasan, may mga outside noise coming from the environment, mga kapitbahay. So parang may naririnig ka na ingay, so na hindi maiiwasan.
Oo, napadyaryo nga yan, di ba? Na may mga mungkahi na pwede bang ipagbawal man lang natin yung mga ingay na yan, yung karaoke, yung mga... I'm trying to imagine what other kinds of noise are distracting our kids, especially now that you would think dapat medyo nami-menus yan. Akala ko ba GCQ tayo? Akala ko ba naka-quarantine tayo? Ano po ba yung mga distraction na nangyayari sa labas?
Marami po, unlike videoke, ayan, kaya may kapitbahay din na maingay kasi they're also working, okay, tapos may mga, marami po talaga. I don't want to pinpoint pa po talaga. But generally speaking, kailangan talaga magkaroon ng at least law para ma-avoid yung risk po. Kasi lalo na kailangan
Now, Miss Cruz, we're almost out of time, but gusto lang po namin kayong kumustahin. What else do you need? What else do you need from government? What else do you need from local government? What else do you need from the rest of society, private sector? Marami naman gustong tumulong talaga sa komunidad natin. Ano pa po ang kailangan ng ating mga guro? Ano pa po ang kailangan ng ating mga estudyante?
Okay, number one po talaga is the better internet connection po. That's the main priority. Okay, kasi we're doing online class. And then another thing is the health support coming from the government. Okay, and the instructional technology allowance, although we don't have that. We have SOC allowance, but that's very minimal compared to what we really need, the instructional materials, IT. That's, I think, the best thing that the government should do for us teachers as well as for the students po. Kung lahat ng mga bata ay makakapag-access, mabibigyan ng mabilis na internet connection, I think malilesen po ang problema sa online class.
Okay, Miss Lailani Cruz, 1 week pa lang po tayo. Will you have the weekend at least na makahinga? And what do you see in the weeks moving forward?
I think it will improve. Okay, sabi ko nga kanina, even though there are struggles, there are challenges, there are obstacles, but as teachers, we're trying our best to give the quality education that our students deserve. Okay, for the coming weekends, actually, hindi pa rin natatapos ang trabaho ng teachers kasi we're still preparing other materials for them. So I think yun lang po para sa kaguruan ng mga sa buong Pilipinas po.
Okay, that's Teacher Lailani Cruz, grade 7 teacher po sa Ramon Magsaysay High School sa Cubao. Mabuhay po kayo, mabuhay po lahat ng ating guro. Ako po si Roby Alampay. I'm sitting in for Cito Beltran. Agenda will be right back. Magandang araw po. You're back on agenda. Ako po si Roby Alampay, sitting in for Cito Beltran. And now we're back. We're going to talk to Tante Galang, founder of the Baguio Barter Community Official.
Yes, good morning po. Good morning to
Hi,
everyone.
good morning po, Miss Galang.
Good morning.
Talagang itong barter has really exploded. No, Reuters says, for example, they've identified at least 100 barter groups with as many as 250,000 members. Bakit ba usong-uso ngayon ang barter?
I think it's because since mahirap ng kumita ng pera recently because of the pandemic nga, people own we tend to look for what is available right now. And majority kasi syempre people, especially tayong mga millennials, ng mga kabataan, mahilig mamili ng mga wala nila magagamit. So now is the perfect time to make use of that. Binabarter nila yung mga gamit nila sa bahay na hindi nila kailangan for something more essential.
Thank you na sinama mo ako dyan sa mga millennial. Tayong mga millennial, naintindihan kita. Pero give us an idea of the kinds of trades that are happening. I mean, the things that you're seeing na, uy, ang galing nun parang hindi ko naisip yun na pwede palang ipagpalit to sa ganito. Give us some idea of some of the more interesting barters that you've seen.
Actually, right now, in my barter group, majority kasi ng mga binabarter dito, since we're in Baguio, mga gulay. Especially we have a lot of farmers na hindi nila mai-travel yung mga gulay nila. Yun yung ginagamit nila to exchange. For example, yung gulay nila, isang sakong gulay in exchange for a sack of rice, mga ganyan. So ito yung mga impressive kasi syempre yung mga produce nila na instead na mas na mabulok, masayang, they barter it na lang.
Okay, tapos yung barter na yan, I mean, for your particular community, my in-laws, my wife, my father-in-law, they come from Baguio, taga-Scout Barrio yung side ng wife ko.
Yes.
But yung community nyo, does that mean that the barter is within the community lang, or does it also allow trading outside of Baguio?
Actually, it started within Baguio lang. Pero as the community grew, lumabas na siya, umabot na siya ng La Trinidad and surrounding municipalities ng Baguio, La Trinidad, yung mga what else? Sablan, ganyan. Yung mga kalapit na city ng Baguio, minsan nakakasama na sila, especially the ones yung mga nakakapasok ng city.
Okay, now we're talking to Tante Galang. She's the founder of the Baguio Barter Community Official. Now, yung sinabi mo, karamihan pagkain yung palitan. I mean, and these are really a lot of, at the back end of this is a lot of farmers na hindi nila mabenta yung produce nila?
Yes po, actually yun nga po yung pagpapansinin niyo po, napakadami po nating farmers na nasasayang po yung mga produce nila na hindi nila na-dispose. Kaya yung iba tinatapon na lang nila. Pero eto nga, since they found a platform where they can exchange their goods, ang laking tulong yan. Yung nasa screen natin ngayon like that, mga mga artists of Baguio po yan. Yun po yung mga local artists ng Baguio, binabarter po nila yung mga paintings nila in exchange for goods as well. Actually, people barter for for survival lang po. And this mga winners po natin yan, yung mga nasa pictures na next.
No, but that's why I wanted to ask. That's why I was asking kung pwede bang outside of Baguio, for that matter, outside of Benguet. People watching might say, "Uy, baka pwede akong tumulong." Apart from the fact na baka meron talaga akong gusto, na whether it's food or an item. If people are interested with bartering from your community in particular, kaya ba yan? I mean, I don't know. I mean.
Yes, as much as we want to, hindi mahirap po kasi ang travel outside of Baguio right now. So yung mga nagbabarter po is mga taga dito rin kasi they do meetups, ganyan. Kasi since they are bartering food, hindi po nila mai-ship kasi mabubulok, ganyan. So mostly po talaga ng mga na magbabarter is around the area lang din po talaga.
But is that a cost issue is it a matter of mahal magpa-deliver and hindi ka, or is it a matter of the lockdown? Is it a matter of hindi, parang meron talagang mga barriers, physical barriers, protocols na hindi
Yes.
talaga pwedeng lampasan?
Yes po, kasi we have to follow the city ordinance. Very strict po talaga dito sa Baguio.
I see.
Mahirap po talaga mag-go in and out of the city, especially if non-essentials po yung mga activities. So we have to stay inside po talaga.
Okay. Now, yung mga, as you said, it's a matter of survival, but the picture that we showed, these were artworks, these were crafts. We know Baguio is a very, very big artist community. What's going on there? Is that for a cause as well? And is that also to support we also know the big agricultural sector in Benguet, or is that purely for art for art's sake, or what?
Actually, since there are a lot of artists in Baguio po, may mga communities din po tayo ng mga artists. Some of them, binabarter po nila yung mga artworks nila for donation. Yung, for example, they will barter their artwork for a couple of price. I-donate din po nila. Pero meron din po kasi tayong mga artists na mga nangangailangan din po. So, ibinabarter po nila yung mga artworks nila for their personal needs as well. Yung mga necessities, yung mga needs po nila for their daily.
Speaking of needs, kanina pinag-uusapan natin, we had two guests talk about the first week of school, first week of online learning. I don't think may magugulat naman that we're talking about the problems with access to gadgets, to computers. Is this figuring in a lot of trades as well?
Yes po, napakarami pong nagbo-barter ng mga gamit nila sa bahay in exchange for laptop. Actually, majority po talaga mga needs po talaga ng kids nila. Yung mga cellphone nila, binabarter na nila sa laptop, ganyan. Kasi mas importante daw ang laptop na yun. Mga ganun po. And those are the needs.
Yes. And paano ka naman, how did you get into the center of this? I mean, how did you set up? I know a lot of people who started setting up Viber groups for their own villages and nagsisisi na sila. Parang hindi naman ako nag-volunteer. Sinabi ko lang naman na pwede bumili ng ubi pandesal dito. Biglang ako na ngayon ng takbuhan ng lahat ng neighbors ko. Ikaw, how did you end up being at the center of this barter community?
Actually, I created the group out of the blue. Sabi ko, gawa nga ako ng barter group sa Baguio dahil wala nga pong barter group ngayon dito sa Baguio. So I decided to make one. And also to help. Actually, it's because we are members of Rotary Club of Baguio. So it's more, we are really into trying to help out the community. And I realized, I think since mahirap nga po ngayon kumuha ng cash dahil walang mga trabaho, we realized bartering is the best activity we can do para po makatulong tayo sa community. So that's how it started. Actually, it started with just me and my friends and some of my relatives, ganyan. It was just a small group until maraming nakarinig, nakakita, sumali na rin po sila. That's how it started po.
Now we're talking about the Baguio Barter Community official center, Facebook, IG. Where do people find it? Facebook. Okay.
Yes.
Now, like I said, yung iba sinabi, umpisahan ko kaya to, parang for a limited community and so on. Yung iba nagsisisi because biglang lahat na ng messages. If other people want to set up a barter community and they really want to run it properly, you don't just set up a Facebook page and then hayaan mo na sila, di ba? What are the real investments on your part, if not necessarily money, in terms of time? Ano yung trabaho that really goes into facilitating, running, sustaining a barter community?
It's actually a hard work, honestly. At first, I was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed talaga ako at first na ang daming palang problema na may encounter habang lumalaki yung grupo natin. Luckily, it is a collective effort din po talaga from my group. We are a team po right now. There's 20 of us managing the group. Marami po tayong moderators. Actually, malaking tulong po talaga yung mga ka-group, mga team yung kasama ko sa team na tumutulong sa akin patakbuhin po yung grupo. Actually, without them, hindi po talaga mapapatakbo yung grupo ng maayos and safe for everyone.
Ano yung I mean, that's a good point. That's a good word, no? Safe for everyone, as you said. Bakit? Ano ba yung kailangan yung i-moderate? I mean, the people, I'm thinking, oy, tinayo ko yung Facebook page. People can now use it. Alam nila where to find each other. Ba't kailangan ng moderation? Saan ba kayo gumigitna dyan? And what are some safety issues?
Yes, actually, there's a lot of issues as we went along the way before. May mga issues po na may mga scammers, hindi po natin maiwasan. Mga manloloko po yung hihingi ng tulong pero hindi pala nila kailangan ng tulong, mga financial needs. And also, pag we have to moderate yung mga tao po na may mga nag-aaway-away po kasi minsan sa grupo, so we have to moderate that. Also, yung mga fake accounts, hindi po natin yan inaalaw sa group, so we need to filter yung mga membership requests po sa grupo natin. Also yung mga post approvals, we get around 1,000 post approvals in a day. So iniisa-isa po yan ng mga moderators natin na napakasisipag talaga. Iniisa-isa po nila yan to make sure that the members are following the posting guidelines.
You're purely volunteer kayo or may libreng gulay kayo dito o libreng red rice, libreng kape o anong mga fringe benefits nyo para sa sarili nyo?
Actually, ang mga benefits lang po nakukuha namin is minsan may mga members po tayo na nagpapadala ng mga product nila for free taste, ganyan. Pero when it comes to monetary, wala po talaga. Mga free taste lang po ng mga pagkain, ganyan. And a lot of mga grateful members, mga nagpapadala minsan may nagpadala ng vitamins for us, mga ganun po. Healthy rin, parang.
But Tante, paano nyo malalaman? Ako, I'm curious about that. Diba? Parang I've joined some groups and sinasabi, antayin mo, minomoderate namin kung papapasukin ka namin o hindi. Diba? For the same issues that you mentioned, you want to know kung totoo ba yung sinasabi nitong taong to na nangangailangan siya or scammer ba to, wala pala siyang ite-trade talaga or walang ibebenta. But how do you know? How will you know, for example, give us some, not just for barter community, but for online safety natin lahat. What are some basic telltale signs na scammer yung nagbebenta? Or for that matter, what are some basic telltale signs na yung humihingi ng tulong, hindi totoo yan?
Yes, actually, yun po, dito po gumaling na lang po kaming mag-filter along the way kasi yung mga moderators po natin, ang ginagawa po nila, i-open yung account, titignan po nila kung kailan ginawa yung account, titignan nila kung may pictures po ba nung may-ari ng account or kung may mga pagkakakilanlan. Actually, yun po yung natin. Kapag may pagkakakilanlan yung account, ina-approve po natin. Pero kapag wala, kunyari, yung sulat ng pangalan baliktad or Chinese, yung character, yung name, mga ganyan, hindi po natin ina-approve yan. Tapos walang profile pictures and bago lang pong gawa yung account. Yan po yung mga dinedecline ng grupo natin.
Ano ibig sabihin ng pagkakakilanlan? Not only that mababasa mo, mukhang totoo yung pangalan, what else? Kailangan may common friends, kailangan yes, taga Baguio. I mean, what other tips? Because I think the advice there goes beyond, as I said, the barter community, but on the larger question of online behavior and online safety.
Yes. Chine-check din po namin kung sino yung mga friends niya. Actually, it's easier to identify ngayon pag less than 100 or 200 yung friends tapos walang mga mutuals. Doon po namin nakikita pag bagong gawa lang yung account, walang grupo na iba maliban sa amin, mga ganyan. Or walang unless they're senior citizens. May marami po kasi tayong miyembro na senior citizens. So, we have to give way to them. Minsan kasi ang mga senior natin hindi masyadong techie. Isang picture lang nila yung nasa Facebook nila, okay na, mga ganyan. So, sometimes we really have to, iniisa-isa rin po talaga namin.
Okay, we're talking to Tante Galang, founder of the Baguio Barter Community official, and marami na siyang volunteers and mga kaibigan around her. And as you said, you get the fulfillment. You're not getting paid for this. It's a volunteer. I know you're helping a lot of farmers. You say you just get fulfillment out of this, but tell us a story. I mean, give us a moment where you felt like, wow, parang even though I went into this wanting to help people, even this situation I didn't imagine. Give us one moment that really made it all worth it for you.
Yes, it's realizing kasi may mga barters nga po tayo na for example, yung citronella plant niya in exchange for candles. Minsan nakakaano rin po na yung mga members po mismo ng grupo natin ang nagtutulong-tulong. Sila na po yung gumawa ng paraan para maipahatid nila yung tulong nilang lahat dito sa taong nangangailangan na to. Collective effort na po ang nangyayari na sila na hindi sila magkakakilala, but since they have one mission, it is to help. So nagtutulong-tulong sila para maiparating yung tulong nila sa isang miyembro na nangangailangan. Mga ganun na, and it's very heartwarming na to know na marami pa rin po talaga tayong miyembro na gustong tumulong sa mga kapwa nila. Yes.
Well, Baguio has always been a wonderful community, very closely. Kahit lumalaki ang Baguio, there's always been that community vibe. But so what you're saying is, around itong volunteer movement na ginawa nyo, is marami pang maliliit din na volunteer movement because nagkukumpuni rin sila dahil hindi rin ganun kadali. Even just, you would think, okay na yung trade. Tapos then the traders realize, teka, wala pa rin akong access. I don't even know how to do this. So meron pang mga tumutulong doon.
Marami po. Merong mga nagbabarter tapos hindi na po nila kukunin yung binabarter nila. They just wanna give it sa mga nangangailangan. Marami po tayong Good Samaritan sa group.
Now, give us an idea. I mean, we only have 1 minute left, but give us an idea of the kinds of things that people can find on the Baguio Barter Community official. Ano pa bang mga pwede? I mean, assuming na pwede, pero kahit hindi, bigyan mo lang sila ng rason para...
Anything under the sun, TV, mga gamit sa bahay in exchange for gulay, bigas, kahit anong maisipan po ninyo as long as pasok po siya sa community and Facebook guidelines natin, pwede.
Okay, what's the biggest item that was traded that you saw?
Ang may nakita po akong vegetable truck. Vegetable truck po truck po ng gulay. In exchange po siya for a farm lot.
Wow. Okay, para so isang buong truck para sa isang buong lote.
Yes po.
Okay.
So that's the biggest so far.
Okay, we've been talking to Tante Galang, founder of the Baguio Barter Community official. You can find them on Facebook. Maraming salamat po for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And once again, ako po si Roby Alampay. I'm just sitting in for Idol Cito Beltran. You've been watching Agenda. Maraming salamat po. Have a good day.